My name is Celeste Monroe. I'm 32 years old, and 5 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, I found out my father had not simply been delayed. He had chosen a side. I was standing in my wedding dress with one hand pressed against my ribs, trying to slow my breathing before the music changed when my phone started buzzing on the vanity. For a second, I almost let it ring. My fiancé was already waiting. The guests were already seated. My veil was pinned. My bouquet was ready. And I wanted to believe that for once nothing from my family could reach me inside that room. Then I saw my sister's name on the screen. I answered, and before I could speak, she gave a soft little laugh. The kind of laugh people use when they want you to know they enjoyed hurting you. "Don't wait for Dad," she said. "He chose to stand with me." The room went silent around me. "How could you do this?" I whispered. She didn't hesitate. "You should have known your place." My fingers tightened around the phone until they hurt. What made it worse was that some part of me believed her before I wanted to. Every birthday where she needed more attention, every family dinner where her feelings mattered more than mine, every proud moment where Dad looked away because choosing me would make her angry. I stared at myself in the mirror dressed like a bride, feeling like the forgotten daughter all over again. I thought I would have to walk into that ceremony alone. I thought everyone would turn and watch me search for the father who had chosen not to come. Then the door behind me swung open. Before I tell you what happened after that, tell me where you are and what the weather is like where you are. I want to know how far this story can travel, because what happened next did not just change my wedding, it changed the way my whole family saw me. The woman standing in the doorway was Miriam Clark, the retired school principal who had become more like family to me than most of the people who shared my last name. She took one look at my face, then at the phone in my hand, and closed the door behind her. "What did she do this time?" she asked. That question almost broke me because it meant she understood. This did not look strange to someone who had watched me grow up. I handed her the phone without speaking. My sister had already hung up, but her words still filled the room like smoke. Miriam read the message she had sent before the call, and her face hardened. "She told you this now?" I nodded. 5 minutes before the ceremony. Miriam's mouth tightened. Cruel people love timing. It lets them pretend the damage was accidental. I wanted to defend my family out of habit, to say, maybe Dad misunderstood. Maybe my sister panicked. Maybe this was complicated. But those excuses had carried me through childhood, and they felt rotten now. Miriam stepped closer. "Celeste, your father's failure today is not proof that you are hard to love." I looked down at my dress and laughed without humor. "Then why does he keep proving I'm easier to leave?" She did not flinch. She had known me since I was the quiet girl who stayed after school helping teachers because I did not want to go home before dinner. She noticed when I stopped bringing permission slips back, signed because Dad forgot and Mom only promised to remind him. She sat beside me at my scholarship ceremony when my father's chair stayed empty. That night, Dad had taken my sister to a bridal expo in Atlanta because she was building her future. I stood on stage with a certificate in my hand, staring at an empty seat, telling myself it did not matter. Miriam found me later near the vending machines and said, "A child should never have to pretend an empty chair is normal." Years later, when I became a school counselor, she sent me a note that said, "The children who feel invisible will know you see them." Dad called my job sweet but impractical. My sister smiled and said, "Of course you chose a career around broken kids." Everyone laughed because she said it with charm. And I laughed too because I had been trained to make insults smaller. Miriam looked at me now, standing in white satin with my bouquet trembling on the table beside me. You have spent your life being reasonable so other people could be selfish without consequences. Not today. My throat burned. I still want him here. Her voice softened. Of course you do. Wanting your father does not make you weak. But wanting him does not mean he has earned the right to stand beside you. Outside the door, the music shifted. Guests were waiting. Caleb was probably wondering why I was late. That hurt differently because Caleb had never once made me beg to matter. He noticed when I got quiet. He asked later if a joke had cut too deep. He knew enough about my family to be worried, but not enough to know my sister had chosen the worst possible moment to open the oldest wound. A soft knock came from the other side of the door, and the coordinator whispered that Caleb had asked if I needed anything. I closed my eyes. He could feel me from across a building. My own father could ignore me from across a lifetime. Miriam touched my shoulder. You do not have to decide this second, but remember who you are before you let them tell you. I turned toward the mirror. For a moment, I saw the little girl who searched every crowd for a man who kept choosing other people's needs. Then I saw the grown woman who had built a life outside the house that taught her to shrink. I picked up my bouquet. I need to know what she said to him. Miriam nodded. Then let's stop letting her control the story. When I opened the bridal suite door, my hands had stopped shaking, but my heart felt bruised from the inside. Miriam walked a step behind me, close enough to catch me if I broke, but far enough to let me stand on my own. The hallway outside the ceremony room was narrow, lined with framed photographs of the historic library where Caleb and I had chosen to get married. It should have felt warm. Instead, it felt like a tunnel leading straight back into the family pattern I had spent years trying to escape. I made it halfway to the side entrance before I saw my sister. Veronica Monroe stood beneath a brass wall lamp in her champagne bridesmaid dress, one hip against the wall, phone in her hand, smile waiting. She looked polished and expensive, like every room was a stage she had already claimed. She built her career around weddings, styling brides, and posting perfect photos. And now she stood outside mine, looking like she had just made sure I would remember it for the wrong reason. There she is, she said. I wondered if you were going to hide until everyone got uncomfortable. I stopped a few feet away. Where is Dad? She tilted her head. You mean the man I told you not to wait for? Her eyes flicked to Miriam. This is a family business. Miriam stayed calm. Then perhaps you should have acted like family. Veronica laughed. She ran to a school principal on her wedding day. That tells you everything. I stepped forward. Tell me what you said to him. I told him the truth. No, you told him whatever would make him feel guilty enough to choose you. Her smile sharpened. Maybe he chose me because he finally admitted I needed him more. There it was, the sentence that explained our whole childhood. Veronica never wanted love unless it proved she could take something from me. You needed him more today. She looked at me over. Come on, Celeste. Stable job. Perfect little firefighter husband. All your teacher friends acting like you save the world because you listen to children cry for a living. You love being the noble one. You'll survive disappointment. I'm the one people actually notice when I fall apart. For 1 second, I almost pied her. Almost. But I had spent too many years being cut by her emptiness to dress it up as pain. So you called me before my wedding to tell me Dad abandoned me because you wanted attention. Her face hardened. No, I called because someone needed to remind you that you are not the center of this family just because you found a man willing to marry you. The old me would have looked away. The old me would have softened my voice. But that woman was not standing there anymore. This is my wedding. I said you were invited to stand beside me, and somehow that still was not enough. Veronica pushed off the wall. Do you know what people have said all morning? How tasteful this place is. How sweet it is that a school counselor and a paramedic found each other. Everyone is eating up your humble bride story. I stared at her. So that is what this is about. You wanted the photos, the compliments, the credit. And when people started seeing me instead of you attacked the one thing you knew would hurt most. Her nostrils flared. Dad knows you are stronger. He worries about me because I matter in a way you never understood. Before I could answer, Mom appeared at the end of the hall. Elaine Monroe hurried toward us with tears already in her eyes. "Please," she whispered. "Not here. Not today." I turned to her. "Did you know?" Her face collapsed. "Celeste, did you know Dad was not planning to walk me down the aisle?" She glanced at Veronica, then back at me. That glance told me enough. He was upset. Mom said your sister was upset. Everything happened so fast. I went cold. So you knew. I thought he would come around. Veronica rolled her eyes. "See, this is what she does. She makes everything sound like a crime scene." I looked at her. "You hurt people and call their pain drama." The hallway fell silent. Even Mom stopped crying for a breath. Veronica recovered first. "Say whatever you want. The ceremony starts in 2 minutes. Without Dad, everybody will wonder what you did to make your own father stay away." That was the ugliest part. She had imagined the whispers, the empty space, my face trying not to break. She had enjoyed it and called it truth. The coordinator appeared, nervous and pale. "Celeste, the music is ready whenever you are." Veronica lifted her chin. "Go on then, show everyone how strong you are." I looked at Mom. "Where is he?" She could not answer. Then the side door opened behind her. My father stepped inside, and the look on his face told me he already knew he had chosen wrong. Graham Monroe looked older than he had that morning. Not sorry, not brave, just older. Like the weight of what he had done had reached his body before it reached his mouth. He stood inside the side entrance in his dark suit, one hand near the door handle, eyes moving from me to Veronica, to Mom, to Miriam, then down to the floor. My sister's confidence cracked instantly. "Dad," she said, "why are you here?" That question destroyed every excuse he could have offered. He was not late by accident. He had been somewhere else because Veronica expected him to stay there. Dad swallowed. "I came to talk to Celeste." Veronica stepped toward him. "We already talked about this." He flinched at us, and I saw the pattern clearly. She did not ask for support. She claimed it. I looked at him. "Were you going to let me stand there waiting for you?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Mom whispered, "Graham, please." Miriam stood beside me, silent and steady. Dad finally said I was going to come in before the music started. I almost laughed. Before the music started, or after I had accepted that you were not coming. His face tightened. "Your sister was very upset. It is my wedding day. I know that. Do you?" My voice stayed low, but the hallway seemed to lean toward it. "She called me 5 minutes before the ceremony and said you chose her. Not that you were delayed, not that there was a misunderstanding. She said you chose to stand with her." Dad closed his eyes for half a second, and I knew he had heard that phrase before. "She was afraid," he said. "Afraid of what?" Veronica cut in. "Of losing her family? Of being pushed aside while everyone worships you today?" "Nobody pushed you aside," I said. "You were at my bridal party." "As decoration," she snapped, "as proof that you are the forgiving little sister." Dad raised a hand. "Enough." But the word had no power because he always used it after the damage was done. I looked at him again. "What did she tell you?" He rubbed his face. She said she felt like you were replacing us, that this wedding was about your new life and the people from your work, and that she felt humiliated. So, your solution was to make sure I felt that way instead. He looked wounded, as if my clarity was unfair. I was trying to keep peace. That sentence landed like a slap. It was the family prayer. Keep peace. Stay quiet. Do not upset Veronica. Do not make Dad choose. Be easier. Be stronger. Be less. Miriam finally spoke. Peace that depends on one child swallowing pain is not peace. It is training. Dad looked embarrassed. This is a family matter. It became more than that when your daughter needed an adult and you chose convenience. Veronica laughed harshly. Now the school principal gets to lecture us. Miriam did not look at her. She kept her eyes on my father. A child should never have to become low maintenance to be loved. The words moved through the hallway like quiet thunder. Dad's jaw worked, but he did not answer. I remembered every time I was called mature when I was really abandoned. Every time I was praised for understanding when I had stopped expecting protection. Every time Veronica exploded and got comfort while I stayed calm and got forgotten. Dad, I said, did you tell her I always make things emotional and difficult? His eyes flicked to Veronica. There it was. I was frustrated. Did you? I said. You and I have had tension. Veronica snapped. You said she always turns everything into a test. I looked at her. Thank you. Her face changed when she realized she had helped me. Dad went pale. Celeste, I did not mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? He had no answer. I stepped closer. You reward whoever screams loudest and punish whoever stays quiet. Then you call the quiet one difficult when she finally speaks. Mom cried harder. Please, sweetheart. He came. He is here now. I turned to her. He came because the story might make him look bad, not because I was hurt. Dad's face crumpled, but this time I did not save him from shame. He needed to feel it. If I had not found out, I asked, would you have come to me before the ceremony and told me yourself? The silence was complete. Dad looked down. Mom covered her mouth. Veronica stared at him, uncertain. That silence answered more honestly than he ever would. He would have let me wait. He would have let me wonder. Veronica recovered first. Tell her, she demanded. Tell her you chose me because I needed you. Dad did not look at her. He did not look at me either. My sister had used my father's weakness as a weapon, and he had handed it to her because it was easier than becoming the parent I needed. The coordinator approached. Celeste, we really do need to begin. I looked toward the closed doors. For years, I had imagined walking through them with my father. Now I understood the aisle was no longer about tradition. It was about truth. Dad must have sensed the change in me because panic broke through his shame. Let me walk you down the aisle, he said. The words should have healed something. Once I would have grabbed them like bread, telling myself he had come around, that families made mistakes, that the important thing was he was here now. But standing in that hallway with Veronica's cruelty still ringing in my ears, and my father's silence still answering the question he would not, I understood the difference between a gift and a rescue attempt. He did not offer because he had protected me. He offered because the doors were about to open and people would see what he had done. No, I said. Dad blinked. What? Mom gasped. Veronica stared, then started to smile like my refusal was another wound she could enjoy. Celeste, Dad said softly, the way he used my name when he wanted forgiveness before an apology. Do not do this. I looked at him carefully. This was the man who taught me to scan rooms for disappointment before joy. The man who remembered Veronica's appointments, photo shoots, heartbreaks, launches, moods, and emergencies, but forgot my award nights, my counseling graduation, my first day at the school where I helped children feel seen. He was not a monster. That made it harder. He was a father who loved me in theory and failed me in practice, then expected the theory to be enough. "You do not get to perform fatherhood at the last minute," I said. Mom reached for my hand. "He is still your father." I pulled back gently. Then he should have acted like one before there was an audience. Veronica's smile vanished. She had expected tears, not boundaries. "So what? You are going to punish him forever because I told you the truth. You did not tell me the truth. I said you arranged a humiliation and called it honesty. You are being dramatic." "No, I am being clear." She looked at Dad. "Say something." But Dad only stood there, finally learning what it felt like to want a place beside someone and not be allowed to claim it. The coordinator whispered that the doors needed to open. Guests were waiting. Caleb was waiting. My future was waiting. And my family did not have the right to delay it. I turned toward Miriam. She had stayed silent, hands folded, eyes full, but steady. She looked shocked when my gaze landed on her, like she had never imagined herself at the center of this moment. That was why I wanted her there. She had never loved me for an audience. "Miriam," I said, my voice shaking, "would you walk with me?" Her eyes widened. "Celeste, you were there when my father missed the scholarship ceremony. You signed the recommendation that helped me get into college. You sent me books when I became a counselor. You taught me that children who feel unwanted are not unworthy. You told me today I did not have to disappear from my own life." Tears filled her eyes. "If anyone walks me down that aisle," I said, "it should be someone who showed up before anyone was watching." Mom sobbed into her hands. Dad turned pale. Veronica's face shifted from disbelief to rage. "You are replacing Dad with a retired principal?" she hissed. "At your wedding?" "No," I said. "I am choosing the person who treated me like I mattered when there was nothing to gain." Veronica's laugh cracked. "Everyone will think you are making some pathetic statement." "Good," I said. "Maybe some statements need to be made." Dad stepped forward. "Celeste, please do not embarrass me like this." I saw the little girl inside me wanting to protect him from pain, even after he failed to protect her. Then I let that little girl rest. "I am not embarrassing you," I said. "I am refusing to hide what you chose." Miriam slowly offered me her arm. Her hand trembled. Mine did too. The music changed rich and solemn, and the guests began to rise on the other side. Veronica looked from me to Miriam to Dad, searching for control and finding none. Her smile disappeared completely. The doors opened. Dad lowered his head and could not look up. I placed my hand on Miriam's arm, lifted my chin, and stepped forward. I did not walk toward my future as the daughter they left behind. I walked as the woman they could no longer control. The moment we entered the ceremony room, the air changed. The hallway had been tight and poisoned by old wounds, but inside the restored library, everything was golden light, polished wood, white flowers, and rows of people turning toward me with smiles that slowly shifted into confusion. I could feel the question moving through the guests. Where was my father? Why was Miriam Clark walking with me? Why did my mother look like she had been crying? Why was Veronica standing near the side entrance with a face like glass about to crack? For a second, old shame rose in my throat, telling me to explain, apologize, and make everyone comfortable. Then Miriam tightened her arm under my hand and whispered, "Keep walking." So I did, step by step. The whispers faded behind the music. I looked ahead and saw Caleb standing at the altar in his navy suit, steady and calm. His face changed the instant he understood. He did not look embarrassed. He did not look toward my father for permission to read the room. He looked at me like my pain did not make me less worthy of joy. When we reached him, Miriam placed my hand into Caleb's. Then she kissed my cheek and whispered, "You were never hard to love." I swallowed a sob. Caleb heard it and moved his thumb gently across my knuckles. "I've got you," he whispered. The efficiency began, warm but careful, and for a while the room settled into the rhythm of a wedding. Words about love, commitment, choosing each other every day. I could feel Dad somewhere behind me, but I did not turn. I would not let his regrets steal the front of my mind. When it was time for vows, Caleb went first. He spoke of building a home where silence would never be punished, where tenderness would not have to be earned, where two people could be strong without being alone. He said he loved the way I listened to children who felt invisible because I knew what invisibility cost. He said marrying me was not rescuing me from my past, but joining the future I had already fought to build. By the time he finished, tears were on more than one face. Then it was my turn. I had written soft, careful vows weeks before, but the woman standing there now could not speak only in softness. I looked at Caleb and said, "I used to think love meant being easy to choose. I thought if I asked for less, forgave faster, and stayed quiet long enough, the people who hurt me would finally see me. But real love does not make you compete for a place at the table. Real love does not use your patience as permission to neglect you. Real love shows up, tells the truth, and protects your dignity when no one is watching." Caleb's eyes filled, and for the first time that day, my heart steadied. Then my father's voice broke through from the back. "Celeste." The room went still. I turned slowly. Dad stood near the last row, gripping the back of a chair. Mom was crying beside him. Veronica stood near the side aisle, frozen with fury. Dad looked at me, then at the guests. "I failed my daughter today," he said. A murmur moved through the room. "And not only today," Veronica reacted like he had slapped her. "Dad, stop." He did not. I let fear make me cruel. I let one daughter's anger excuse my neglect of another. I told myself Celeste was strong enough to handle being hurt, and that was cowardice. My chest tightened. I had wanted those words for years, but hearing them there did not erase the pain. It exposed it. Veronica rushed forward. "This is ridiculous. She is manipulating all of you. She has always wanted to look like the victim." Heads turned. People were seeing her now. Not the polished wedding stylist. Not the charming older sister. Her. Caleb stepped slightly in front of me, standing with me, but not blocking me. "This ceremony is not yours," he said calmly. Veronica glared. "Do not talk to me like I am the problem." Miriam turned from the front row. A sister who loved her would have protected this moment. Veronica flushed. Of course, Saint Celeste and her rescuers. Dad's voice came again, lower this time. "Enough, Veronica." That word landed differently now. For once, it came before she could finish destroying something. She looked at him as if he had become a stranger. "You are choosing her." Dad looked devastated, but he did not look away. "I am choosing the truth." The room fell silent. Veronica opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The power she had carried for years depended on Dad protecting her from consequences. At that moment, he stopped. I turned back to Caleb. "I'm getting married now," I said. The officiant nodded. Caleb and I exchanged rings with shaking hands and clear hearts. When we were pronounced husband and wife, the applause rose like something bigger than celebration. It sounded like relief. It sounded like a witness. It sounded like the moment a room full of people understood I had not walked down the aisle alone at all. After the kiss, I thought the worst was over. Caleb and I walked back down the aisle while guests stood, clapped, cried, and smiled like people who knew they had just witnessed something they would remember for years. Outside in the courtyard, the reception glowed beneath strings of warm lights with white roses on the tables and old brick under our feet. For a few minutes, I let myself believe the day could simply become beautiful again. Caleb held my hand like an anchor. Miriam was surrounded by guests thanking her, and each time I heard someone say she had done the right thing, another tight place in my chest loosened. But Veronica was not finished. People like my sister do not lose the spotlight quietly. They either own the room or burn it down for noticing someone else. I saw her near the edge of the courtyard, speaking sharply to Dad while Mom stood between them with both hands raised, still trying to hold together a piece that had already collapsed. At first, I turned away. I wanted my first dance. I wanted dinner. I wanted 1 hour where my marriage mattered more than my family's damage. Then Veronica's voice rose. "You humiliated me for her." The courtyard quieted. Dad looked exhausted, but something in him had changed. Maybe shame had finally done what love should have done years before. He said, "No, Veronica, you humiliated yourself." The words landed like a door closing. Veronica stared, then laughed in disbelief. "After everything I have done for this family, you are defending her." Dad said, "I am admitting I failed her. You failed me." She snapped. "You let her replace you with some school principal in front of everyone." Miriam stood only a few tables away and lowered her eyes, not from shame, but from sadness. One guest, a woman who owned a local event company, quietly asked Veronica, "Is it true you called the bride before the ceremony and told her her father abandoned her?" Veronica's face changed. In 1 second, she realized this was no longer a family argument behind closed doors. This was a professional disaster. The wedding world she wanted to impress was listening. "That is not what happened," she said too fast. Celeste twisted everything. I stepped forward before Caleb could stop me, though he stayed close. Then say, "What happened?" Veronica looked around. Guests were watching. Dad was watching. For once, Mom did not interrupt to soften the truth. "You want the story?" Veronica said, shaking with rage. "Fine. I was tired of watching everyone act like she is some innocent saint. She plays small and wounded, and everyone falls for it. I just wanted Dad to prove I still mattered." There it was not an apology, a confession dressed as self-pity. My fear left me. "You did matter," I said. "You mattered enough to be invited into this day. You mattered enough to stand beside me, but you wanted me humiliated because sharing love has never been enough for you." Her face twisted. "You think you won?" I looked at her calmly. "This was never a game to me." "That is why you lost." She moved forward with another insult ready, but Caleb's co-workers and the venue manager stepped between us. No one touched her roughly. They did not need to. Her own behavior had done enough. The manager said, "Ma'am, it is time for you to leave." Veronica looked at Dad, waiting for the old rescue. He did not move. That was the real punishment. Not being escorted out, not the whispers, not the guests quietly deciding never to hire her. The real punishment was that the person who always protected her from consequences finally let her stand in them. She was let out through the side gate, still calling my name, still trying to become the victim of a fire she had lit herself. When the gate closed, the courtyard felt different. Not perfect, just honest. Dad approached me later after the first dance, and after Caleb and I finally ate 2 bites of dinner. He did not ask for forgiveness that mattered. He stood a few feet away and said, I see it now. I know seeing it late does not erase what I did. I looked at him for a long time. Part of me wanted to run into his arms because daughters do not stop wanting fathers just because fathers fail. But another part of me knew better than to trade one honest moment for instant repair. If you want a relationship with me, I said, it cannot be built on me staying quiet. You do not get to call my pain drama. You do not get to use the word family to make me accept disrespect. And you do not get back the role you lost today with one apology. His eyes filled. I understand. Maybe he did. Maybe he did not. Time would tell, and I would not prove his remorse for him. Mom came to crying softly, and I told her the truth in gentler words. Keeping the peace by asking the hurt person to be silent is not peace. It is permission for harm to continue. Later, Miriam gave a toast. She raised her glass and said, "Every child deserves adults who show up, and every adult should learn that love is not proven by control but by consistency." The courtyard went quiet, then filled with applause. That was the lesson I carried with me. Family should never teach a child that love must be earned through silence. Real love gives people dignity, safety, and room to become whole. Setting boundaries is not revenge. Sometimes it is education for everyone watching because it teaches that respect, accountability, and emotional honesty matter more than appearances. When Caleb and I danced under the lights, I looked back at the aisle where I once thought I would walk in abandoned. Instead, I had walked in with the person who had earned that place through years of quiet loyalty. Veronica tried to make my wedding a story about rejection. She failed. My father tried to arrive late and still claim the honor. He lost that right. And I left that night not as the daughter begging broken people to choose her, but as the woman who finally understood that being chosen by the wrong people is not worth losing self.